All right. Good morning. I hope everybody's doing well. And I just found out recently that my chair is Dr. Flowers, and I just want to welcome him along with the Trinity leaders and professors as well of anybody that's reviewing this academic presentation. I have completed um, all of my said work on the RW 721 through 724. I just have to review, I see 10 students, and then just put the grade, just grade them, and I'll be done with that. I sent my first draft to the dissertation with Dr. Flowers, and I had done this presentation back in January, and I have been again. I've been working on this for 4 months, better part of 4 months, maybe longer. But just in terms of the research. But this video has been updated. This video has my current um, lineup of how it looks. Before I just put in a shortened version. This one I'm going to call it out a little bit and try to get through it and not take up a full hour or less. I'll try to do it in 30 to 40 minutes or less. So again, so this is the RW 720 academic presentation. My name is Dean Alley. You can see my student ID here. And so who are you watching in this presentation? So again, my name is Dean, and I live in Northeast North Carolina in Camden County. God has blessed me to live here for the last 17 years. It is 18 miles to the Atlantic Ocean as the crow flies east from here. And typically within, I don't know, 50 minutes, I could be on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. So I'm actually the next county over. And I'm probably about 40 minutes from Virginia Beach, Norfolk, and that area. So this is pretty much rural, and it's 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 a nice area. It's not fast paced at all. I think there's less than 10,000 people live in this county, and I think I know them all because you end up waving to them between the sheriffs and um, the judge and everybody else. You kind of get to know everybody, and which is a good thing in small town. So I've been married. This year will be 34 years this October. We have two beautiful daughters and two granddaughters. So we have my oldest who finished East Carolina with her master's in the health care, um, and she works for the hospital. She's doing very well. My youngest daughter's had these two babies, and uh, they take up a lot of time, and there's no question about it. They are a blessing from God, and we're blessed to have them. And the old saying is, you really love your children, but until you have grandchildren, you really know what love's all about. Maybe because it's your second chance, and you kind of have an opportunity to revisit that. I guess I don't know. It's just a different feeling. So my profession or my occupation, I'm an IT guy. I'm a, um, I'm a software guy, technical software. I'm a configuration management or manager. What does that mean? That means I like to manage everything systematically. I like everything um, has a process, a system, and I like to manage it, know what it is, and then I manage the status accounting, the auditing. You have what we call the physical configuration audit, then you have the FCA, which is your functional audits. Essentially, what you're doing is you're preserving the integrity of your software, and no changes to that unless it goes through a full process of review and accreditation. So that's part of the deal there. That is just a pin scratch of what I do. I share that a little bit with you, but I'm accomplished in the rotary and fixed wing as the computer systems engineer and electrical engineer tech. So I have a vast, well, about 5 years of engineering, aircraft, aeronautical, and I have now 10 years in what I would call cross-pollinated with, fixed wing and rotary. So basically a helicopter and a plane. And know pretty much the ins and outs for that. And I'm on what we call a feasibility board, and that's just a board of engineers. And I don't think there's very many civilians on it, but mainly Coast Guard officers. I'm a member of the Harmony Baptist Church. I'm privileged to serve on the leadership team. I'm the treasurer. I'm the men's Bible teacher, a senior care group leader, and part of the hospitality team. I had an opportunity last night to teach in the men's class last night. I had a gentleman come forward who is struggling with just the fact of Christianity. He comes from a Roman Catholic background, and he had a lot of questions after the session of what I was teaching. So I met with him for about 30, 40 minutes, and then I'm going to circle back with him on Friday, take him to lunch, and maybe try to answer some more questions for him. And and see where he's at with some of these distractions. So I'm privileged to be part of this church that's growing. So in March, well, this says March 22, but we started the process coordination board. I'll have pastors from Virginia and from North Carolina on a board, and I will go in front of the board and answer or do the best I can answer most of their questions. So I should be ordained for that very quickly. I preach on occasion as well. So there's a lot of things that I kind of do, and I just feel it's my responsibility to serve and glorify God. So let's talk about it. Here's me. My goal is to achieve the Ph.D. from Trinity, to use this information or this study. Number one, I'm a lifetime learner. I'm probably you've heard of um, early bloomer, late bloomer. I'm a late bloomer. Most people call me crazy for going to school as old as I am, but I enjoy, and I'm kind of a theology geek now. I like apologetics. I'm not very good at it, um, but I do like the theology side of it, the religious studies, and I do like the that piece and that aspect of my study. So I'd spend a lot of my time um, doing a lot of research and studying and all those things. So, um, and well. Let me show you. Let's see if you can see this. This is just part of my arsenal, um, as Dr. Pritchard would say, books. Buy books. All right. So, again, my goal, I told you, is to give back, to encourage, to be a servant leader, and a scholar. Um, I am a professional at work. I deal with professionals all day long. It's very nice to go to work with professionals. A lot of them, everybody knows I'm a Christian. Everybody knows um, my belief system, and obviously, I don't impose it on anybody, but everybody knows that I certainly is are a follower of Christ. So I have that strong desire to help and to teach. I hope to be a positive influence in in the lives and those around me. Um, I'm committed to again glorifying God in all that I do, and this dissertation is an opportunity for me to achieve that goal. And let me say this: I found that Dr. Flowers is my chair. He is going to be my chair, and boy, I tell you, that's an honor. So I appreciate that, and I look forward to working with him. So let's go on to the next one. So the requirement. So this is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to develop original research, affirm the answering of the dissertation will positively benefit the body of the knowledge. I'll talk a little bit about that towards the end. The candidates to prepare a PowerPoint and presentation explaining the importance. That's what I'm doing here. To define define the scope and study and lay out the purpose. So I'm going to lay this out, walk through it, give you an idea of where I'm at. So uh, good leaders were once good followers. To be a good leader, you had to be a follower. You had to start there, right? So I just kind of throw this slide up here: support, goals, motivation, success, contribution, teamwork. You always hear the thing. You hear the old cliche. There's no I in team, and then leadership. And most people that know my leadership style, I've been leading for a very long time, and I continually evaluate myself and how I lead. So that's that lifetime learner that I have. But I don't take it lightly. Um, and if you talk to most of my team or all of my team, they'll tell you that I challenge and inspire, and um, they enjoy working for me. I don't know. They're professionals too, and I treat them as such. So how did I get to where I'm at? So the method of discovery, I just grabbed this real quick. Um, this is from Leedy Barber and Krause and Merriam and Cranton. This is one of their models: initiate, locate, select, organize, present, and access. So I've been working on this process. I would say initiate what I want to study. That was earlier, and I had to locate, select, organize. This is kind of where I was for like here about 4 months right here, these four blocks. And I'm presenting here today and assessing. So I have a pretty good background on that. And I think I can answer a lot of stuff. So, what is my proposed question? Well, Christian leadership versus secular leadership. In today's Christian leadership versus secular leadership, what are the dichotomies? Um, what's the difference? Um, and I'm going to talk about that. And I have to say, this conversation started with my wife. I remember in December, maybe early as November, I was talking to my wife. I said, about the dissertation and everything, and topics, and I've looked at, you got to narrow it down. You don't want to have something that's going to have way too many legs on it. Um, you want to be able to get to a deeper level of understanding and really answer the question. And PhDs are really about research, and that's how I took my look. So I wanted to research that because I have a strong background of both secular and the Christian um, domain now. And then my question was, I said to my wife, and I said, I don't know if I could take a promotion at work because I was worried that I would have to diminish my uh, belief system and lead in a way that I wouldn't want to. Because in my past, and I'm not saying every leader, this is just my experience, uh, have examples where you do things or you have to do things that your boss tells you to do that you don't want to do, that I think sometimes can be unethical, not fair. But so that was a question I asked. I wanted to answer that. So what's the difference? Well, why am I asking? Well, I don't know if I could take that position. I don't know if I could take that promotion with more money and a big office and all that stuff like I used to have back in the day. I'm not sure I could do that today. So that's kind of where I started with my question. How will this benefit? So, Christian versus the secular leadership is one of the most common topics of discussion in this world today, and it's evident in our political candidates, in the way the political candidates, lawmakers that choose the way of the companies to run, and the churches as organized. The difference between the leaders is often clear, but often times it's not always black and white. By that I mean politicians want to hold the babies, kiss the babies, and get in front of the camera, and there's a lot of politics there. They say they're Christian, but they really don't um, show fruits of it, and that typically is an issue. And I've seen that in my experience with dignitaries. They want to be they want to be in that role, but are they really? genuine. And in my previous paper that I wrote on the RW 721 to 724, I actually attacked that topic of authentic leadership or genuine leadership. And it's kind of it's a sublot out of my foundational dissertation. Authentic, what does that mean? So um, I presented that as well. So anyway, so in my opinion, the Christian secular leaderships greatly varied. Christian leadership can be defined being influenced by the teachings of Jesus Christ, and Christian leaders are often called to lead in a way that is devoted to the service of God, um, and and the upliftment of people, especially those in need. Um, Christian leadership is focused on transformation of the people to build them up, in, obviously the kingdom. It is not about power, but it's about serving. Jesus gives us great examples throughout the Bible. It is, or throughout the New Testament and God Himself and Him, obviously the three unity, triune. Um, we see that all through the Bible. It's never about self gain. It's all about service. It's not about winning, but it's about building. About building. Christian leadership is not a building up, and Christian leadership is not about the person, but the purpose. About serving. So, scooting right here. So my intent, like Dr. E says, my intent is not to try to boil the ocean. I'm not trying to pull everything in. I'm not trying to pull everything into this dissertation and try to answer all these questions. I'm specifically going to look at the Christian and secular leadership, essentially, and really what's the difference of it. And my other sub-paper was authentic, the authenticity of it. So many Christian leaders today are secular leaders, and they're dedicated to serving the needs and professions and achieving their work assignments. So there are many Christians that are already secular leaders. So they're committed to the basic principles of leadership, such as developing the talent, abilities, while striving to be Christ-like in their actions. Christian leaders are called to be a model citizen and leader among the communities, regardless of their political views. It can be said the secular leader primarily focuses on the needs of their companies, attempt to make the best decisions for their stockholders. They lack the more profound value here. I was part of this. I worked for a national and international company, and we worked for the stockholders, and employees seem to be second. So they primarily focus on making the most amount of money for their shareholders without considering the impact or the decisions of um, the lives of their employees, which are secondary in many cases. So in today's political environment, secular leadership sometimes don't possess the pious view of Christian leaders. In many ways, this is more effective leadership style in the short term. Nevertheless, it fails to provide the profound sense of purpose and meaning for their employees. There's a lot to be said right there. What's the old saying? Fake it till you make it as a leader. Act like you know, but you don't know. Um, you know, ask open-ended questions. Um, you know, there's some factors there that you know I would say an unsure secular leader that maybe not a believer or whatever. He may be a good person. He may treat his people pretty much fair in a professional sense, but there's a huge lacking um, of what we think um, when we don't think about Christ being the Savior and the person that came and died for us. So this study seeks to determine the difference in light of the Christian leadership and secular leadership in its philosophies. There are many ways to end the sentence. Leadership is. So Ryder Stogdill, which is an author, points out in an analysis of leadership research, there are many different definitions of leadership, as there are people who have tried to define it. It can be mirrored with words such as um, democracy, love, peace, although intuitively we know that this means, with such terms, the words have different meanings for different people. I'm doing a study now. The book's called Real Christianity, and it's about being real as a Christian and the challenges and stuff. And one of the chapters was to define Christianity and or Christian, and everybody had a different viewpoint of what Christianity was or what a Christian was. So, a true statement. So that's kind of the purpose there. Again, to understand the differences in the philosophies. In the general context, the study of leadership is often approached from the secular perspective. This is not to say that leadership cannot be approached from a religious perspective. Instead, this is to say that the study of leadership is often comes from the secular perspective, which means that it is often defined as a secular term. So, um, it's termed, people use it loosely. The approach from that perspective, this is to say that the study of leadership comes from most of where the secular side. That's most of the work and study that's been done in this field is from a secular standpoint. I think of Stephen Covey. I think of Kuzner and Potts. I think of gosh, you can't even talk leadership until you talk about John Maxwell. I mean, so there's a lot of from the viewpoint of secular, and some of it is kind of leaned into the Christian side, but often or not, it's comes and defined from a secular side. I write a Harley as my cup. So let's move into 1.3 guiding questions. The Bible is overflowing with discussions of various leaders, both good and bad. We know that with kings and prophets, priests, patriarchs. The Bible has the most outstanding leadership manual ever written in many ways. First, it provides a description of how the world um, is intended to be led by God's people. It's a beautiful roadmap. The Bible has tremendous, um, it's a tremendous manual to help one in its leadership to ask the questions. There's many leadership positions described in the Bible. Let's look at the limitations. And again, this is in my dissertation, and I expand greatly on this. So 1.4, delimitations or the boundaries. This analysis does not determine which definition of leader is the most appropriate for the church and secular world. The readers will decide that on their own. So I'm not going to um, put my biases in. I'm just going to report what I see from a Christian and a secular standpoint. And as readers, you'll determine what you would fall into. So the intent is purpose is to explore and delineate the leadership found in the Bible, focus on the present Christian age and secular. There it is, current or present Christian age and secular. Um, 1.5 is significance to the study. So leadership is a subject of great debate. We talked earlier. It's concerned throughout the secular world and the global church. In business, in politics, in education, in entertainment, and many other fields. Leadership is viewed as a set of skills, qualities, and abilities and enables a person to be effective. Um, it is also a subject of great interest to those who wish to learn more about the world around them. It is a matter of interest to the secular minded Christian who may wonder what differentiates the leadership in the church in the supposed to be type modeled. So, um, we talk about how we view a leader. They possess these sets of skills, and you've heard the saying, "They're born." This person's born a leader. He was born older, which is just a catchphrase. But I think you can. I think you have to work that muscle. You may have some better insight. You may see things a little bit clearer than most people, but for the most part, um, you you have to develop that. You have to work at it. So that was in chapter one. I talked about the significance. Let's talk about the precedent literature. 2.1. The Old Testament and New Testament offer fascinating theoretical descriptions of leadership in the Israel society. Leaders are described in various ways in the text. There's a vast range of leadership positions within Israel. In some sense, leadership is evident in every human society. um, the type of underlining assumption. While the present challenges are many, godly, good Christian leadership has never been simple, as documented through Scripture. God has certainly not left out uh, His people without a clear sense of direction. He has communicated His vision, and He will His will through His Word. Um, and through His Spirit. Throughout the circumstances He's allowed the coming upon us, He has also called and gifted certain people to be leaders and communicate His vision and call others to follow. So, there's I saw a leaders, it's a skill set test you take. We do it at church when we go through our discipleship program. Basically shows you what your skill sets are and where your strong points are. From an empirical standpoint, you would read and answer the questions, and it would kind of point out where you think that might be strong. So, role of the researcher. What's my role? Well, that's pretty easy. Um, all right. The role of leadership, including the qualifications. So, this prose uses qualitative research methods with the concept of literal study, combining the several techniques of analytical method and developing a model of argument that can be inspired for further research. Key here is not to stop here. Continue to press the topic and learn. The Trinity academic student, myself, will conduct this research and analyze the data in this scenario study. The student has extensive research skills obtained through the years in electrical and software engineering, which gives significant experience by using a detailed approach for documenting the findings. I told you how I like everything in a process. Everything has a place. When we make a change, it gets documented. So I'm very much detailed when it comes to that. So the selection description. So I'll be doing most of that documentation of these findings. So the trained student will not have participants for this research. Instead, the researcher will focus on the bibliographical method um, and choose which research data will be used for this inquiry. The library and its resources, computer technology resources, theological websites, articles, journals, and books will be used. Just know I have a huge list in my dissertation to show you some sources. So our collection, the study of leadership is broad, right? Um, that has been explored from many angles. This is not new. Um, in the last several years, though, there's been an enhanced focus on faith and religious leadership. This has developed into the emergence of the unique branch of leadership research, the study of Christian leadership. So starting to gain some traction, right? Typically, we said earlier, people focus on the secular side, and really, um, you're starting to see more focus on the Christian leadership side. More books coming out. So, method of ensuring credibility. The number one essential component is credibility, right? Is the accuracy in the research. If your research is inaccurate, there's no credibility in your research. So all the research that I've done so far, 100 plus um, different sources cited uh, and to the page, doesn't include another 200 that gave me data. I was reading all kinds of stuff um, just to give me some better grasp of the leadership side from many different angles. So um, as far as the dissertation will have, it'll meet the requirements of probably close to 110 of really good resources. So to have a compelling argument, one must be able to back up the claims with facts and studies. I think I'll do that very well in this study. This is where research comes from the center and analyzes and studied. When conducting academic research, it's essential to ensure that the sources used support the conclusions and provide background information, and they're credible, right? So 2.7, the summary of this precedent literature. Excellent leadership is urgently needed today. Nobody's going to debunk that. Partly because we live in a time of escalated rapid change. I'm in the IT world. Moore's law. Every 16 to 18 months, you have new technology. Um, your operating systems, Microsoft, all these folks, Intel, they're constantly updating to a faster, bigger, smaller um, processor, or better GUIs, or better widgets, better software widgets, better things. And why did they do that? Well, a lot of it's consumer demand. What if it could do this? And they continue to ask for more and more and more. So escalating rapid change is crazy. People naturally look to the leaders at times of insecurity, fear, and challenge. Yet answers are harder to find, and moreover, globalization means that there are no true isolated challenges, so they say. So um, when there's an event or situation that goes on, typically I'll just pick on 9/11 real quick. 9/11, when that happened, and the phones were cut off, everything was quiet. We never knew anything was going on. Um, there was a lot of folks that were looking to leadership because they were insecure, or they were in fear. So that's a true. That's I know that because I was part of that. So the appropriate content to this. So the theological prepositions, presuppositions model of Christian leadership exist worldwide. They often spring primarily from the local church. And in this paper, early stages of development and theoretical framework and research, I focus on the organizational and leadership theories proposed in this field that's derived from Western um, religion, theology, and ethical practice under leadership. So, let me close this out. Sorry about that. I have um, a reminder here. Sorry. So basically, those are the focus is organization and leadership theories that I pull from the Western religion theology as well, and ethical practices. And ethical practices, and I'll say this. Um, I work for the government. I constantly have to take ethical testing. Courses. I have to sign and provide my assets, where my money's invested, and I have to do this. And they take this very seriously. But it doesn't seem like that's taken too seriously in the White House, no matter who they are. So 3.2, leadership, history, and perspective. The first step in understanding the polarities between the two, or in today's leadership, both Christian and secular, is to look to the Bible for guidance. Biblical history is full of examples of leaders who were moved by the vision of God to lead people into the future. However, biblically, what did the Bible say about leadership? That's a question I'll tear into. Well, in the Old Testament, the Torah and the books and other books of the Bible were described as God's leaders as having a vision. And I kind of cut that off there because the dissertation explains it a little bit better. So 3.3, there's much debate from a historical standpoint, the importance of religious terms and how they're described. Um, and basically how they're described, church offices, Christian leadership, its society. Some believe they're outdated and they no longer are relevant in our current society. However, pastor, minister, bishop, imam, rabbi, priest are still used in modern society to describe the people who lead our congregations, our communities, and our nation, for that matter. These terms and office offices continue to be relevant today, not just because of people who use them, uh, but because of the principles and values that undergird them. So, um, moving on to additional appropriate content, the approach we must ask: who were the Christian leaders and pastors in the early first century church? Moreover, what is the exact nature of these offices? What is their actual role? We know the apostles and elders or overseers primarily occupy these positions in leadership and offices. This can be linked to today's pastors and bishops and elders. So the past history with um, you know disciples and apostles and prophets, all that can be transpired to today's world as a minister, a pastor, a priest, a chaplain, elder, deacons. All these are leadership positions in today that play a factor. The guiding strength of Christian leadership is known. This is what is the traditional view. Guiding strength of Christian leadership is to uh, God. Know God to become more like Jesus. That should be a guiding strength. So we want to know God and strive to be more like Christ. One of the best gifts God gave Christians in the presence of the Holy Spirit, who takes up the permanent residence in our hearts of believers. I'm not going to spit them out, but there's 4 or 5 verses here in my dissertation that talks as a proof text. The Holy Spirit guides us with prudent discernment and transforms our hearts as well. So, what are the traditional views from secular leadership? And keep in mind, I'm highlighting um, the dissertation on where I'm going. So, in the present world, secular leadership is defined in many ways. Most definitions contain the idea that Christian principles and values no longer lead in society. These have been progressively changed by principles and values derived from our contemporary world and brand new religions, uh, namely prosperity, individual entertainment. Um, how do I get more people to watch me? How do I get on TV? Um, what can I do that the old saying shock and awe? How can I get their attention and have them just captivated into what I'm saying? Do I need to have more music, more lights, more attractiveness that people need to come, or do I do the old 1950s with the view of the church and moving? You know, essentially, people would say it would be boring, but so yeah, what are, so yeah, traditional. So yeah, yeah. So basically, again, brand new religions that pop up all the time. You have the progressive leadership. What was the one I heard the other day? Annihilism. Chris Date. Never heard of annihilism in my life. Another view. I mean, uh, when I was in the military and I was in the war. You had old men talking and you had young men dying. And when I think of some of this scholarly stuff, you have old men talking, and everybody debates everything, or everybody has an opinion, or everybody has a viewpoint. You know, um, you know the relativity of you in the philosophy. I've been studying a lot of philosophy with Bruce Gore, and I just got understanding a few things that kind of opens my eyes a little bit. But so, what does the Bible say? Many great leaders in the Bible or throughout the history. Some leaders are known for their military conquest, think of Joshua, while others have been known for their outstanding humanity efforts. Secular history is full of stories and leaders as well, and they have achieved greatness as well. Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Winston Churchill, Abraham Lincoln, just to name a few. Um, Even though the decision was made to look to the Bible as their primary source, that's where what changed? Why are we drifting away from God? Well, similar to what the Israelites did um, when they were led out of Egypt, and they murmured, they moaned, and they complained, and They never saw the promised land. He never let them leave until the last one was gone and dead. So, um, you know, in terms of a leader, what does it look like from a primary source of leadership? So, um, God is God is sovereign. God is righteous. God, um, has the purpose. Sometimes we don't know the full gamut or the old saying full Monty. We don't know the full Monty here, but I would say that yeah, I guess I don't want to go into that. So I kind of expand on that part of leadership principles of great leaders, um, both secular and Christian leaders. So secondary questions: how do they differ? What's dichotomy between these two? First question is significant context to change many people are experiencing today. The challenge of learning to find and share Christianity and what many labels as secular. However, a person who represents God can see that the best way to do this is to not shy away from secularism, but instead to lean into it and provide Christian leadership and Christianity needs to be in the context of secularism, and or which is two different distinct. So we need Christian leaders in government. We need Christian leaderships in many other areas. Um, for just the basic principles of getting back to God. And as we continue to drift um, away from God, um, what changed? Why are we getting worse? Well, we've taken God out of our schools, off our buildings. We've taken prayer out. I mean, um, I want to say what was it, 1957 or 50? It was in the late 50s when they came out with um, helping single mothers with um, monies, basically. If you were a single mother and a child, you got X amount of money. Well, that opened the floodgates for a lot of single mothers because they were getting paid not to do anything, and they took advantage of it. I say that because I know people in this that are in the system that abuse the system and are experts, and it's passed down generation to generation. So it's not, the intent is not the way it's being used in many cases. Some there is, and there's some legitimate out there, but um, yeah, so we get away from God, and it just things change dramatically. So, should the attributes of a leader what should it look like in both circumstances? I talk a lot about that. I give you 100+ Bible verses and explain at the end how a leader is in this context for each of those verses. Um, Administrator or manager. So, according to R.L. Brandel, planning, organizing, leading, controlling is the management process with many practical actions, and management is a process. So I would say this: I've always said a leader leads and a manager manages the task. Lead and task. It's kind of how I've always viewed things. All right, so trying to get to the end here. So as the research continues to be more explicit, um, it could be about Christian. It's to seek leadership in a secular world. According to most reviews, secular and leadership they differ significantly. Um, I'm not going to go much more on that because it's in my dissertation. As a leader, one can choose to lead in a secular or Christian manner. The two styles are pretty different, and both have their pros and cons. And I won't go any further with that. So basically, the chapter I just summarized: as leaders, we serve and provide for those who follow and trust us. While titles and methods are different, some fundamental differences between Christian leaders and secular leaders are present. Well, I talk more about that in my dissertation. So, conclusions. So, applied research thesis. I aim to compare the contrast between leadership styles from Christian to secular. I defined the secular leadership, compared and contrast, included difference and similarities in leadership in theory and methodological, um, a method basically of theory. Um, Leadership implication of flying. Leadership's complex phenomenon, um, and that is difficult to define. Have you ever talked to an engineer and you ask them a question? You know what the first thing they say? It depends. Well, yeah, it depends because there's a lot of factors that make a decision. Um, you know, to make a better decision, you want more factors, but they'll always start off with, well, it depends. So these again, it's complex. There's one of the most common definitions in leadership: the process of influence others to accomplish the goal of shared vision. That's pretty much a goal that everybody has. So this thesis examines again these two types of leadership to explore and benefits of Christian leadership, and then the drawbacks. Um, we discuss how the Bible and Christian worldview provide a superior framework for leadership in the secular environment. Conclusion: as a leader, what changes? Let's not get twisted. Leadership is leadership, Christian or secular. Men and women lead in any context. However, this perspective uh, changes when Christian leadership applies a biblical based construct or constructs to their leadership and their worldview. That's kind of the conclusion where I just give you kind of a little bit there, a little bite of it. It's getting a little bit long here. I have lots of the bibliography, and the appendices have several breakouts and supporting casts. So I thank you. I want to say again, thank you to Trinity. I want to say thank you to Dr. Flowers and the folks that are in the grading part of this. And I hope to expedite this as quick as I can. I need to go home and see my mom who's been in the hospital, but I want to make sure I get everything done before I leave. And boy, it'd be nice to be able to go home and say, hey, mom, guess what? I've, God's blessed me with the opportunity to have a degree from Trinity. I thank you. God bless, and take care.